Okay. Okay, well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the second of the Ask Andy sessions taking place across Greater Manchester. We're here tonight in Trafford at the fantastic Stretford Public Hall, a magnificent building built by John Rylands, he of library and cotton fame. One of the first multimillionaires to build grand structures in Manchester. Now we've got Gary Neville. So, without further ado, I want to really, rather than hear me waffling on, we're going to get into the meat of the discussions tonight. Lots of issues to cover, some key themes to get to. You won't be surprised to hear that the first thing we're going to look at is the whole issue of the Greater Manchester Spatial Framework and all that entails. So I've got some questions I chose in advance, and I'm not sure if Stephen Longdon is here. Stephen, are you here at all?
Stephen's not. I am present.
Would you be able to ask the question for him? If you just wait for the mic to come to you, and if stand up, please, and if you just give us your name and then give the question. Could you stand for us? Thank you very much, if possible. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. My name's Jasmine, and I represent Save Greater Manchester Greenbelt groups. We've got 39 locally based groups of the Save Greater Manchester Greenbelt Association, and we welcome your commitment to a radical rewrite of the GMSF. Would you please take this opportunity to recommit yourself to ensuring that the amount of Greenbelt land allocated for the development is dramatically reduced from the current 30% of land that has been earmarked? Thank you.
Okay, well, thanks, Jasmine. But firstly, good evening, everybody. It's great that so many of you have come along this evening. And as Rob says, a fantastic venue. So thanks to everybody at Stretford Public Hall for hosting us tonight. In answer to your question, Jasmine, I do commit to that. It was a key pledge in my mayoral campaign. The rewrite is underway. You will have seen in the summer we agreed a new timetable for the Greater Manchester Spatial Framework, where we go in stages, more consultation, to a new draft next June. And that will be a deadline we stick to. So you will have a new plan by then, and it will be radically different. Today we've published all the responses to the consultation because we want it to be open and clear what everybody was saying. I have said that I want to refocus attention on our town centres across Greater Manchester. Let's look at the potential that they have to bring housing growth, particularly around our transport interchanges, because one of my concerns with the original plan was that it would have led to, if you like, decaying town centres surrounded by urban sprawl, more cars on the road. It wasn't a vision I felt I could put my name to. So yes is the answer. But what I would say to you is just two things, picking up Rob's point about brief answers. We need a plan, and we need an ambitious plan, because Greater Manchester needs to know where it's going in terms of jobs and homes. So I say that again tonight. And I wouldn't want to answer this question without saying to you, there still are going to be difficult decisions. And I said that during the campaign. I've never said that we can't touch any green space. There will still be difficult things that we will need to do. But yes, there will be a big reduction in the amount of greenbelt taken. There'll be a focus on town centres, higher density housing. And I want to get a plan. If everybody's prepared to give and take a bit, because it will need that, because I think we'd all accept here that more new homes are needed, then I hope we can come to a plan that represents not just a compromise, but a plan that is the right plan for the future of Greater Manchester.
I think there's a particular interest in Trafford. I imagine the Save Flixton Greenbelt group were wondering if they can sleep easy tonight. Is somebody here from the group who would like to ask a question? If you could just stand up for me, please, sir. Just wait till the microphone comes to you, and if you could give your name. Thank you very much. Could you stand up if possible, please? Thank you very much.
On that question of the rewrite, Andy, a lot of the allocations and density predictions appear to be extremely overestimated. And I was wondering whether, during the whole process of the GMSF over the next 25 years, whether the brownfield option should be taken first and then explored greenfield options at the end of the GMSF, seeing as it's such a long period of time that it's meant to take place. Do you agree that that should be the option? Brownfield first?
I certainly would want to work on that principle, no doubt about it. And the thing that I've said to everybody at the Greater Manchester Combined Authority is that I'm ready to use the powers that I get as your mayor that come with devolution. So the mayor gets the ability to establish what's called a mayoral development corporation, and through that there come extra powers of CPO, compulsory purchase, so that you can bring sites into development that perhaps are difficult if you just leave it to the ordinary run of events. So what I'm saying is it allows for a more interventionist approach to planning. And one of my arguments is we've allowed things to become too developer-led in recent times. And what we need to get into is a more front-foot approach that says, look, this is the right place. This site would produce these kind of homes more than likely. And that then becomes a more logical response to the issue.
As well, I think a lot of the criticism of the GMSF was the fact that a lot of ordinary people were excluded from they said that the consultation, it was clunky, it was difficult to use, and ultimately that's got what people incited into this, is the fact that they weren't consulted in the first place, and that's why, you know, the members of this community want to get involved with discussing how to take this thing forward. We were told this is what you're getting, whether you like it or you don't.
Well, I mean, I don't know if Sean wanted to come in on the
Sean Anstey, leader of Trafford Council.
Just to say one quick thing in answer to that. I mean, obviously it was a draft plan for consultation. People did reply. From here, I want to ensure that we build as much openness and trust as possible. So we published the replies today. There are revised data now on which the new plan will be based. So the Department for Communities and Local Government have changed their housing formula, so that will bring the housing demand down, or requirement down a little bit. Brexit has led to a different growth forecast for Greater Manchester. That will bring it down a little bit further. As we go along, we'll be honest with you and say these are the things that are changing, so that the data is all out there and we can all sort of see that and discuss that before we get to that final plan next June. There will be no shortage of transparency.
Thank you very much. Can I just bring in Sean Anstey, leader of Trafford Council, into this conversation, if possible? Thanks, Sean.
So just very briefly, I'm not able to change how a number of people feel about the actions that we've taken in the past, but we clearly are. At the point in which we published, the GMSF was published in Trafford, we did make attempts to come out into local community on a number of different occasions. We did publish our thinking and rationale behind it. We know that the methodology that DCLG are now going to apply to housing numbers, that our assessment is broadly indicative of where we need to be. But there is an openness and willingness, and always has been, to try and find a solution to some of the concerns and points that are being raised, and we'll continue to make that commitment as we proceed in the coming months.
Thank you very much, Sean. Does anyone, I just want to stay on the theme of Greenbelt for a little bit longer, but then we're going to move on to some other areas. So any other questions on this issue at the moment? Young man there. If you can stand up and give me that.
My name is Sam. I'm part of Team Future. And this is less regarding Team Belt, more regarding what you were talking about with the housing schemes. And you mentioned building more houses. However, are you going to be working with certain companies, for example, Salix Homes in Salford, who own my home, and working to improve the houses that currently host working class families that are crumbling due to lack of funding and care?
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Well, thank you. No, thank you, Sam, for your question. As you can hear, it's a really good question. Just a couple of points. One of the reasons why I've shifted focus to town centres and away from Greenbelt is that, in my view, if you just focus there, it's not going to build the houses that are going to be affordable to young people like yourself. So, you know, that is one of the reasons why we need to focus more on brownfield and town centres. But you raise a really crucial point about the existing housing stock in Greater Manchester. Where I can make a commitment to you tonight is on private rented homes, and there are large numbers. It's a hugely growing sector in Greater Manchester now, with people living in homes run by private landlords, and just under half of them don't meet what people call the decent home standard, which is outrageous really when you consider that many of them are getting housing benefit in respect of those properties, and yet they don't reinvest that money in the upkeep of the properties so that they're at a decent, safe standard. So what I would like to do as Mayor is bring through a regulation scheme of private landlords in Greater Manchester, a Greater Manchester Good Landlord scheme, where we say these are the standards that we expect all landlords to provide. And then it'll be clear to the public which ones are prepared to sign up and which ones are not prepared to sign up. And if necessary, we should take tougher enforcement action against those who are not prepared to sign up, a basic set of decent standards.
In terms of quality of housing and the price of housing, I looked on before I came tonight, the average rental in Trafford is between £700 and £800 a month. That's a lot of money. Jeremy Corbyn talked yesterday about rent controls. Any thoughts on responding to that, Andy?
I think a lot of people in Greater Manchester would have a lot of sympathy with that. The private rented sector is very lightly regulated, if regulated at all. And as I was saying, they have carte blanche, really, to do what they like. And it's not just jacking up rents. We know that they can evict people at the drop of a hat. And the largest driver at the moment of the rising levels of rough sleeping and homelessness we see are down to actually the actions of private landlords who evict people without just cause or without proper process. So, in my view, we need to see an act of Parliament that is much tougher on the private rented sector. And in my view, yes, should include rent controls. New York have a system of rent controls. Paris have a system of rent controls. If it works there, why can't it work here?
Any come back on that, please? Gentleman there. If you could stand up.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm a homelessness officer for Trafford. You're right in what you're saying about the rental prices in Trafford. The average rental price is probably a bit more than you're saying, actually. And we encounter problems on a daily basis. To put it broadly to you, unfortunately, the private rental sector in Trafford is just ridiculous in the sense that the landlords can charge what they want. Yeah. What annoys me more than anything is there is land available, but when large organisations purchase land, they're purchasing land to build new homes, but these are luxury properties. Okay, give you a perfect example. Regent's Road, Salford Quays. You've got all these big banners where basically they're advertising one bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom luxury apartments. Our clientele aren't going to be able to afford those properties. Even if I've spoken to some of these developers about renting them, and the rents are going to be at least £700 per calendar month for 1 bedroom flat. So you're right in saying there's got to be regulations, but when is it going to happen? Because if there's no land available, where are they going to build?
Thank you.
Yeah, well, good question. And yes, we might have to wait a long time for an act of Parliament to change things, but I want to do whatever I can at a Greater Manchester level to respond to the concerns that you just raised. I don't think we've had enough emphasis in Greater Manchester on homes for social rent and homes for affordable rent. And we need to have a new priority in both of those areas. So we will shortly bring forward new proposals with relation to what's called the Greater Manchester Housing Fund to give it that new emphasis. There are other things that we can do as well, of course, and it does link to the sites that are chosen, doesn't it, or the sites that are designated, because the nature of the site is more likely to give rise to a certain type of housing. So, I hear where you're coming from. Of course, it has to be a mix, doesn't it? A mix, but at the moment, the balance certainly isn't right.
It does feel in the city centre like posh blocks are going up like mushrooms. I think there's some interesting ideas coming out of Salford at the moment. Is there anything in that for the whole of Greater Manchester you've seen, Andy?
Well, yes, and that's why I appointed the City Mayor of Salford, Paul Dennett, to lead on housing and planning for Greater Manchester, because I think, Paul has got a long track record of speaking up on these issues and as calling for the need for more affordable housing and homes for social rent. And there is a real lack of them in all 10 of our boroughs. So that's where our focus needs to be. And just to come back to the original questions on the spatial framework, the debate for me has been a little bit about how do we build X many thousand new homes, as though that's the end in itself. and not enough about, well, what type of homes. In the end, in Greater Manchester, we need a spatial framework and a housing policy that will, in the end, solve the housing crisis. That's where we should be going.
Gentlemen.
Hi there, Andy. It's Will Patterson
Hello,
here
Will.
from the Green Party. Hiya. There's one factor within the spatial framework discussion that really gets lost a lot of the time, and that's the business side of it as well, the planning for warehousing, the planning for jobs, for example. But the problem is that you had this very lopsided approach in the first draft that saw most of the office and white-collar jobs in the centre, and then a great deal of other sectors, including logistics, for example, based in the outer boroughs. The problem is you look at sectors like logistics and they're ripe for automation, they're ripe for new technologies coming in and making sure that the jobs that we think are going to be there for a 20-year building plan and a 40-year jobs plan was put in the introduction. And we're looking at jobs in warehousing that are likely to be done by robots. We're looking at, for instance, driverless lorries being piloted as well as another example. So I guess my question is, if we're going to be doing this in terms of the job side, what aspects of the redraft, what efforts are you making to try and future-proof the jobs offer to make sure that if we are planning for the long term, the jobs actually are there in the long term?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Will. For those who don't know, Sean and I were with Will on the hustings. Will was the Green Party candidate and spoke very passionately and convincingly on these topics. I agree with you. I think on industry, our ambitions weren't right either, actually. There was a lot of attention devoted to warehousing and distribution, and not enough, I would say, to the high-value, high-quality jobs and industries of the future. And again, that's an area where I want us to have much greater focus. So we should be looking at the industries that have been identified as the ones that could bring the best jobs to Greater Manchester in the next 20 or 30 years, those being in digital and tech, in health care, life sciences, in advanced manufacturing, and in low carbon and green technology. So let's focus on the industries that we've been told are the ones that we can be strong in, rather than going for the easy win. But I agree with you. The ambition was not right on industry either, Will.
Thanks, Andy. Just before I go any further, just to remind everyone that if you want to push a question through to me, you can do it via the hashtag AskAndyGM. So please do contribute that way to our discussion, if the technology works. Let's move on to a very important and very related theme, the whole issue of homelessness. It was a key issue through the campaign. It remains a huge issue for people across Greater Manchester. I'm asking a question now on behalf of Paul Crean, who asks a two-part question. What is being done to support Manchester's homeless community? And in particular, LifeShare, an organisation that is actually being displaced from its location due to a private property development. Over to you, Andy.
Well, on the first part of the question, quite a lot. This is a personal priority of mine. I said it would be in the campaign, and it has been in the 5 months since I've been in position. The commitment I've given is to end rough sleeping in Greater Manchester by 2020. But it's not about just planning for 3 years' time. We've got to take steps right now to give people somewhere to go. So on day one in the job, I set up the Mayor's Homelessness Fund. It's raised over £50,000 so far. I'm making a donation of my own salary to it every month, as I said I would. And some of the grants have already created new beds in Greater Manchester. For instance, a night shelter has just opened in Cheetham Hill with around 15 places, and that is providing somewhere for people to go already. But that is just obviously scratching the surface, and if we're honest, I don't think the problem's getting any better. You know, it seems to me that there are more people on our streets. I think some of those issues are due to benefits changes. The removal of housing benefit from 18 to 21-year-olds, I don't think was the right policy. I don't think it's going to help us, but I don't want to sit here and just say, oh, it's all the government. There's things we can do together as Greater Manchester. So we've got so much going on. We've established a Homelessness Action Network, which are all of the organisations across Greater Manchester working in this area. I have asked all public bodies in Greater Manchester to give greater priority to this issue, to consider what they can do to bring something to the table, because often there's gaps in the system that people fall between the services. You know, they can't get a letter from their GP, or they can't get proof of address from the council. Small things that mean devastation for people because they can't then get access to other services. So we are looking at this across the board, Rob, is the answer. We will do it. I promise you, we will end up sleeping here. I will personally follow this every single week, every day, to make sure that we do it. But obviously, then my appeal goes out to people to contribute whatever you can to this drive that we've established. It seems to me that this is a really sad reflection of the times we're living in. And what I keep saying is, I don't want to live in a society that says, for some people to be winners and successful, other people have to sleep in doorways. I don't believe in that type of Greater Manchester. In 2017, we should be able to put a roof over every head every night of the week. And that is what we will do, and we won't stop until we've achieved it.
Thank you. In my day job as editor of the Evening News, I get more letters and Facebook comments about homelessness than any other issue, I would say. Therefore, I'm sure some people here have got some questions tonight. If I can start over on that side of the room, please. Thank you.
Yeah, Alec McFadden from the Salford Prison Project. Good evening, Andy. As yet, Everton are not losing, by the way, in the game. I just want to raise a real issue. A guy called Pat Mullen, whose brother is a Labour councillor, been homeless for 6 years, continually tried to get a house, told he wasn't a priority. He was a single man. 3 weeks ago, and by the way, he's become an alcoholic and a drug addict as a result of homelessness. He was rushed to hospital, had a heart attack, and his left leg was amputated to save his life. He's now a priority to get a house because he's a one-legged man. What kind of society are we living in?
There's another question in the front here. Thank you.
Hello, Andy. Debbie Blanchard, Great Manchester Housing Action, and also apparently your Universal Credit Task Force. You didn't know you had one until this morning, neither did I. Anyway, blame your deputy for making work. I am getting my head pecked by organisations in youth homelessness. When are we going to have this round table? Because they've got questions, lots of young people have got questions. Can we get on with that, please?
Yeah, no problem.
And I just want to take the opportunity to say, Housing First is not for the under-25s. It's a disaster. It's like the care leaving service. You can't just hand over keys to a house and give them a support worker twice a week. It doesn't work. And a lot of the organisations that are talking to me asking what is going on. We've got Green Bank here, like Manchester Foyer. Excellent, brilliant reports, safe, worth every penny of the £170 a week. They're facing annihilation in 2019 under the supported housing cap. Are you going to save them as they are? Not repurpose them, save them as they are and keep those kids safe. Because they're not safe in adult hostels. You know what happens to young people in adult hostels. They get bullied, they get indecently assaulted.
Can we let Andy Rowell respond to that? Thank you very much. Cheers.
Yeah. No, I absolutely hear that wherever I go. And I am spending a lot of time talking to people. I was at the Booth Centre a couple of weeks ago. I'm sitting down and talking to people. I will pull together the round table that we've talked about before. We've got offers of help actually coming in. Not really made this public yet, but people have come to us with offers to build hostels. We've said to one of them we want to build some purpose-built accommodation for young people, recognising that it's not enough actually just to put a roof over people's head. It's got to be safe. It's got to be a place where they feel secure and they feel they've got peace of mind. It's no good, is it, just putting a roof over people's head if it's not going to give them that sense of personal safety. So we are going to develop some specific accommodation for young people. And Ivan Lewis MP and Beth Knowles, who are chairing the Homelessness Action Network, tell me that we've now got enough plans in the pipeline within 18 months or so, or 2 years, to have enough places in the city region to mean that there is somewhere for everybody to go. So we are well on with things. We haven't made it all public yet, but I want everyone to know that we are well on with things, and there are plans in the pipeline. We're hoping, with Sean's help, to get a government grant quite soon They're setting up what they call trailblazers for homelessness. We're hoping that money will come through shortly. So again, that will enable us to open more beds. So there's lots happening. But Alec, I mean, what can I say? I mean, that says it all, doesn't it? You know, and I think that's the situation we've got to with housing policy in this country. And let's be honest, under all governments, I'm not making this down to any one government. You know, that story really explains directly what's wrong. And, you know, what I'm thinking increasingly is I think we need to get to an act of parliament in this country, in the way that we created a right to free healthcare with the NHS and in a way that we created a right to free education. I think we need to be talking about now a law that gives people a right to decent, affordable, safe housing. Not free housing, but housing that they can afford. Because we cannot have this situation now where people are sofa surfing, you know, hidden homeless, or in the situation that the friend that you described. So this is drastically wrong, I think, and it needs to be rebuilt from the bottom up.
And if I can bring you back to the original question, we do have a ridiculous situation where a unit to help the homeless has been thrown out to make way for a private property development. All these people getting filthy rich in Manchester at the moment by whacking up blocks of apartments. Shouldn't they be contributing and actually building some of these places?
Well, they should, Rob, is what I would say. And that's why I've made the commitment around my own salary, just so I can look other people in the eye and say, well, I'm doing something, can't you do something as well? And I would be particularly looking at property developers to do something. On the specific, I'll take the issue away and look at what's been done here. Because if they are being displaced, it seems to me that they need, at the very least, to be offered an alternative place that they can use.
We've got another question here. Thank you. If you just wait for the microphone, thank you very much. Just down here, thank you.
Thank you. Freddie Greenmantle, Secretary of the Age-Friendly Whalley Range in Chorlton. It's true. The homeless are in trouble, the young people are in trouble, but the older people are in trouble as well. There's a huge crisis coming your way in housing association flats for older people. And I'm at a crisis in the sheltered accommodation that I live in right now. 32 people who are desperate for help.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Shall I answer that one, Rob?
Please, yeah.
It's a really good question.
Yeah.
It's the right question because, again, back on the spatial framework, I don't think there was any real discussion of what type of housing for people of what age. And I've asked again that we should be thinking about building homes for older people as places where more care might be provided, as supported developments. Not you're shaking your head. Go on, tell me why. Oh, sure, but that's what I'm saying. We need.
They're dying. They're getting ill by the second because of how the housing associations are not supporting them. And we're paying in our rent for support we're not getting.
Well, I absolutely hear what you're saying. Obviously, I can't necessarily just wave a magic wand and sort it out. However, I do think we need to start saying these are the places where we should be developing accommodation that particularly is built with the needs of older people in mind. You know, people talk of age-friendly or dementia-friendly accommodation. And because here we've got the devolution of power over the National Health Service and social care, we have got the opportunity to link housing policy with health policy again in a way that nowhere else has. And that could hold the key here to dealing with the issue that you're describing.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm on the local patient participation group as well at my local surgery. So I'm right in the middle of it all.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you.
Just, obviously, we're getting some comments and thoughts coming in. You please, nice one to start for Andy Maggs. Burgess, I like Andy Burnham. Hope he lives up to his promises. Be a soft one. Chris Kelly, just to kind of close the discussion on the homeless, just for now, the debate will continue, but Chris says it's absurd that people sleeping rough, prison leavers, drug addicts and alcoholics with no ID cannot get benefits and cannot get the help they need because they have no form of identification and simply can't get a bank account. Yeah. There's so many issues about the way we live our lives that they just can't access anything.
Yeah, they completely fall out, don't they, of life, and they lose trust in all things and all people, you know, and I think the one thing I would say is I walk around the city centre every 3 months and I do talk to people. The one thing I've learned not to do is generalise in any way, because what you find is there are people who've arrived in that position for a whole host of reasons, you know, young people who are care leavers, young LGBT people, ex-forces, people who have become single or whatever, or been bereaved. You know, there's a whole host of reasons why people end up on those streets. And let's be honest, life has become very precarious for all of us these days, hasn't it? You know, with 0 hours contracts and private landlords who can evict you at, you know, a moment's notice. So, you know, for the grace of God, there go any of us, isn't it? You know, if we're all just a few bad decisions, a few bits of bad luck away from being in a similar position. And I just know that the people of Greater Manchester will rise to this challenge, and we will do it, because I think we're all finding it increasingly worrying, aren't we, what we're seeing. People are coming up to me, Rob, all the time when I'm out around saying, you said you would do something, why isn't it happening? And I understand the frustration people have got, and I feel it a bit myself. But all I can say to you again is, you know, I will be doing everything I can to turn this around, and I fully say to you all, hold me to account at the next mayoral election in May 2020 for what I've done or not done on this particular topic.
Key issue, thank you. Can I move things on anyway? Some more comments coming in regarding a range of issues. Somebody just asked a question about 0 hours contracts, which brings me nicely on to the next question about the whole issue of salaries and pay. Is Victoria, is it Edgerton or Egerton? Yeah. Hi, just wait till the microphone comes to you. We've got an interesting question about wages. Over to you.
So young people don't get a discount on groceries, and they don't get a young person tariff on energy bills or anything like that. They're more likely to be part of the gig economy, and they're most likely to be subject to 0 hour contracts. Yet the government national living wage policy applies to those over 25 and over.
Yeah.
Do you, Andy, have concerns that the government living wage policy directly discriminates against young people under 25? And will you support, are you prepared to support a pledge for the Citizens of Ice Manchester Real Living Wage campaign?
Yeah. I fully support it. And I said when the government brought in that national living wage, that was going to create a two-tier workforce and was going to further kind of undermine young people by allowing that differential to be brought in. In terms of what we're doing, the combined authority and other public bodies in Greater Manchester have a policy that where young people are employed as apprentices by public bodies, we shouldn't just pay them the apprenticeship wage, which is, what is it, £3.40 or 50. They should get at least the minimum wage. So isn't everything that you're calling for, but it's something. We're taking steps on travel for young people. So we've already brought in half-price day saver tickets on the buses, and I'm hoping that tomorrow, when it meets, the Greater Manchester Combined Authority will endorse the plan to give half-price Metrolink to 16 to 18-year-olds off-peak evenings and weekends. These issues matter a lot to me. I don't have all the levers at my disposal to sort it all out, because of wage policy is a national responsibility. But I just want to assure you I am absolutely aware of all of the issues you raise, and I'm doing what I can within the kind of wriggle room I've got to make things better and support young people more.
Okay, thanks. There's a question in the middle there.
Angela Lawrence, Manchester Active Voices. I just wanted to know, following on from the lady's question, what you plan to do around the inequality of wages and in the labour market for BAME people. Black and minority ethnic people. What are you going to do about the fact, and it is a fact, that we're paid less? We're more overqualified and we're not getting the work that we're supposed to do. We're not in the areas of power and influence where we should be with our qualifications. What are you planning to do?
Yeah. So shortly I'm going to begin a consultation on an employment charter for Greater Manchester. Again, I don't have the power to pass an Act of Parliament at this level, but I'm trying to do what I can. Working with Sean, who's got responsibility on skills, and other people on the combined authority, what I want to do is have a debate about what is it to be a good employer in Greater Manchester? And like I was saying with landlords, set out the standards that we would expect people to meet. Now that could meet the pay gap when it comes to people from different backgrounds. It's the gender pay gap as well. What we're going to do is have a consultation on what people want to see in that charter. And you will be absolutely able to raise that issue as part of that, because we could ask people to publish data on workforce, and we could challenge people, employers, on this particular topic. So that's the main thing that I can do, I think, to address the issue that you're raising.
I don't really think, I'm 53 now, I don't think I've got time to wait another 20 years to see that change, because I remember Race Agenda 2010 in Greater Manchester, where the whole idea was to ensure that we had equality across all spectres relating to the BAME community. We're now in 2017 and we're talking about another consultation. It's not good enough. You need to move faster. When I look at the organisations of the Greater Manchester GMACA and all the organisations, I see nobody that looks like me. Why is that?
Fair point. It's a fair point, and it's a challenge that shouldn't just go actually to companies in Greater Manchester. It should go to our public services as well, because I don't think you see people in senior positions as much as we should in our public services as well. So I take your point about consultation, and it all sounds like it's... But I've only been in 5 months, and I do need time to bring these policies through, and you've got to consult people if they're going to have broad-based support. So I understand where you're coming from, but I am trying to move things forward as quickly as I can.
It's quite dark back there. Is a lady at the back waving a hand like that over there? Thank you very much. Yeah. Wave vigorously at the back is probably the best solution. Thank you. I'll get you afterwards, yeah.
Hello. You probably remember me from my PIP tribunal. It's Sian Carradis.
Yeah.
My partner's a toffee, if you remember.
I'm trying to keep that quiet these days.
With regards to discrimination in employment, what is your plan to help people with mental health problems get back into work? I'm currently looking to go back to university to study mental health nursing. And unfortunately, the government don't seem to want to help me get back into work. They do not want to seem to help me with my family life, to try and study and better myself. They're not prepared to give me any help at all. Also, as a schizophrenic, we are also constantly judged. There are 1 in 100 people have schizophrenia. Only 8% of us work. It's not that we can't work. We want to work. People won't let us. What is your plan to help the discrimination of people with anxiety, people with depression, and to give them that bit of long-term support that will help keep them in long-term work so that they can pay taxes and give back to what they've needed?
Yeah. Thank you.
I'll just say a couple of things, and then maybe Sean might want to say something, because Sean leads on these issues for Greater Manchester. So I would say, firstly, in answer to the question, challenge the stigma. I think we've all got to do that as a society. I was saying, wasn't I, just a few moments ago, that life is more precarious now, more stressful, more insecure for everybody. So that explains why levels of mental ill health are on the rise, aren't because everyone's absorbing more and more stress. The problem is, so we've got to challenge the stigma, because again, it could, like homelessness, it could be anybody's family, anybody's son or daughter. So let's get rid of the stigma, number one. The second thing is, then let's have mental health services that catch up with the level of demand that there is out there. The NHS has traditionally treated mental health as the poor relation of the system, the first target for cuts. That's how I'm afraid it's been. However, we've just made a change in Greater Manchester. We've recognised that our mental health services are not good enough, and the devolved NHS has just committed around £130 million extra, reprioritise things and given more money to mental health. It won't solve everything, but it's a recognition that we need to do more. The third thing I would say, and Sean probably will want to pick this up, I would say our answer is more devolution of the DWP budget to local control, because let us here at this level support people in the way that we want to, linking with our own voluntary organisations, get rid of the tick box sanctions regime from DWP and let us develop different ways of supporting people into work. Sure. We've got an early pioneer project on that called Working Well, which Sean has been developing. It really is a good programme that's helping people who've been out of work for a long time.
At that point, can we just bring Sean in? And I've got two more questions at the front. Yeah. Please, Sean, thank you.
So Working Well, I was going to reference, and this is our scheme. What you see with employment support programmes is they just try and push people back into the labour market, to push them into employment and sort of say, that's it, you're on your own. And what Working Well tries to do is to say, well, actually there's an individual at the heart of this. We need to not just support somebody into employment, but then we need to make sure that they stay in employment. So what we do, last year we lobbied really hard with DWP to devolve fully the work and health programme to Greater Manchester. So that means that we can pay our providers to do some of the things that we want. So we pay providers not just when somebody's been supported into employment, but when they've stayed in employment for a period of time. We pay them extra money for getting people into employment that pays the national living wage, all of that sort of stuff. So we're incentivising providers to try and ensure that some of the things you're referring to are met. And just the final thing I'd say is we took a paper through the Combined Authority a few months ago about work and health, which is particularly designed to try and answer the question that's been put, which is, you know, if you separate what you're doing to help somebody back into work from their health and welfare, then you're really going to fail. So we need to take advantage of the opportunities that we have through devolution now to try and do and respond to some of the things that you've said. So hopefully that gives you some reassurance about what we're doing.
Just, if you don't mind, Rob, I'll just have a very quick point on it, because Sean's right. We are in a unique position in Greater Manchester to make these things link up together better for people. So the DWP normally doesn't talk to the health service, whereas we can bring these things together because of what we've got the ability to control here. But I just want to say to you, it's not just mental health. 3% of adults with learning disabilities in Greater Manchester are in work. The national average is 6%. It is shocking. It is quite scandalous, actually. And you could probably get similar figures for adults with autism as well. So, you know, it goes quite far and wide, this issue, and I think there is so much more we could do to improve things.
A question from the gentleman at the front.
Hi, yeah, thanks. 2 points really, if I can. What gets measured gets done. In the early 2010, the 2012, the Equality Act, and part of that was public sector duties. So the public sector had to do things to ensure that their services were accessible and they wasn't being discriminatory. Since the sanctions or any audit or the sanctions have been removed by the last coalition government, they haven't measured or been able to proceed on that basis. So that's my first point. What gets measured gets done. I'd want you to contemplate doing that again. In The Guardian last week, I think it was they published a 1,000 list of top people, influencers and doers across the country. In that list, 36 people were from a BME background. We had one of them speaking to us this morning, Rushdie from Bury, the Bury leader, who's part of part of your team to do one of the consultation exercises. And I just wondered, what can you do with your powers to change that figure so we have more people being in high office from the BME communities?
Good question. Thank you. Andy.
Yeah. Well, it is a good question, and as I was saying before, it isn't in any way good enough. The person that has been referred to is Councillor Rishi Shorey, who is leader of Bury Council, and I've asked Rishi to lead an incredibly important piece of work that is featured in the Manchester Evening News today, and that is a commission on tackling violent extremism. I think following what happened at the arena, we all communities have to ask difficult questions about what we can all do, all of us, more to tackle violent extremism, to tackle the signs of extremism, to report it. That, it seems to me, is a job that has to begin at community level, at family level. And I suppose when you're asking me what can I do, it's about giving people the most important jobs to do, isn't it? And to give people from BME backgrounds, that voice and that platform to really make a difference. So, yeah, I can't justify those figures that you put forward. But here in Greater Manchester, at least, you know, we will always work on the basis of equality and diversity, and we'll have all voices represented in the work that we do.
I think, thanks for mentioning the coverage today. Obviously, I'm sure some of you will be aware that the Manchester Evening News has launched a campaign called We Stand Together, which is obviously after the dreadful events of May the 22nd, we felt that we needed to do something with our many readers to talk about how to celebrate the best of Manchester and to make this a better and safer, more tolerant city. We are campaigning, and obviously one of the first people I approached was Andy, to a campaign to get conflict resolution peace studies into primary and secondary schools in Manchester. We're also working with Ian Hopkins and the team at Greater Manchester Police to really support their work fighting all forms of hate crime, and we're encouraging people to do lots of acts of kindness for each other, particularly reaching out to other communities. All those themes reflect the fact that Greater Manchester is a brilliantly successful city region because it has welcomed people to live here and because it is multicultural, not in spite of. And I think the point you make there is absolutely, totally valid. We're not getting the best out of the people in this city right now. Thank you. Lady here, been waiting for a long time to ask a question in the white top. Can we get the microphone here? Thank you.
No, we need a microphone.
Go for it then. It's easy for the Facebook feed. Thank you. Thanks.
That's one of my problems, actually. I'm loud, and that is a mental illness. And being loud is often people look at you on you with you're different because you are loud. Just say that I've got a 23-year-old daughter. From the moment she was born, I knew that there was something. I won't use a word, not right or not normal, just different. It took to when she was 9, although I asked the doctors, I asked social services, and I said there is something just out of kilter.
Okay. I'm sorry to rush you a little bit. We've got a lot of questions to get to. If we can get towards the question, thank you.
I got accused of child abuse when she was 9. Eventually we got something done, and she was diagnosed with dyspraxia and then ADHD, and so was I. She then got some sort of disability living allowance up to being 16. After that, they just stopped all the benefits. And she didn't get anything until she was 21. It took 5 years. During that time, my hearing problem deteriorated. I can't hear people on the phone. I can hear them, but I can't work out what they're saying. I have to have somebody to interpret it. We was going back and forth. I was on the verge of nearly committing murder because it was just stressing me out so much. And I got something.
Is there a question we're coming to? Sorry, I need to rush you on. Sorry.
Mental health. It's just that some people just do not appreciate how difficult it is. Sometimes we're the square pegs in the round holes, and just because we're different. I am now suffering from hate crime of the church because of ultrarophobia. And if you don't know what that, and some of the police don't even know what that is, and it's the bottom one on their thing of hate crime, it is anybody that's different. So whether it's a goth or you've got piercings or tattoos, people don't like you. And suffering with mental health issues is really, really difficult.
You've made a really powerful point. Very well. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes, sorry. Just get the microphone to the lady there. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Stanley. I am interim chair of Greater Manchester Parent Carer Voice. So we represent parent carers across Greater Manchester who have children with special educational needs and disabilities. We haven't talked very much about children, and those 14.5% of them in Greater Manchester that have special needs or disability. I just really would like to know what your thoughts are around their outcomes and their access to employment. Because that hasn't been part of the conversation so far.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, and thank you for the work you do in this area, because I think it's often the case that parents of children with special educational needs or disabilities, complex needs in whatever way, face a complete battle to get what they need for their children. So they're almost fighting against the system rather than accessing support. And if you're going to have a preventative approach of the kind that Sean and I have spoken about tonight. You have to turn that around completely. So what am I going to do? I wouldn't say this in any way is the whole answer, so don't take this as though I think I've got it all sorted. I haven't. But let me just give you one thing that I've asked public services in Greater Manchester to focus on, which I hope will begin to put forward a better answer to you, and that is focus on school readiness at reception class. So track the developmental progress of kids much more closely from the very, very early ages, 0, 1, 2, 3. Follow their progress and identify those kids who are not developing in the way that you would want them to, and then put in that support to try and ensure that children aren't left behind. Because often, as you'll know, it's too late when it comes to trying to find a job if you've not put those foundations in early on. Now, for your group, you'll probably say, well, that's too late, because we didn't get that support when we needed it. But you do have to try and start there with putting in that support from day one, because that's what you need, isn't it, as parents with children who have those extra needs. More broadly, though, we need to challenge employers through what I was saying before. We want to have an approach here where we are fully inclusive as Greater Manchester, where everyone can fulfil their potential. And we have employers who will say that they will take action to help people with mental health problems into the workforce, or people who've been homeless into the workforce, or people with learning disabilities. That 3% figure is a scandal. That is something we should be totally ashamed of, and we should all resolve to do something about it.
Okay, thanks, Andy. I get little instructions here, including there's a bloke in the middle with a white t-shirt. It's been waiting for ages, so we'll go over to the guy with the white t-shirt. Thank you.
The microphone.
Oh, you've nicked it.
Rob, what have you done there?
Hey, you're next. You're definitely next.
Thank you.
I wasn't sure you had the microphone already. Sorry, carry on.
I'm here and I'm representing a collective group of people. We're a campaign, Not Guilty by Association. David Lammy MP published a report a couple of weeks ago. It explicitly demonstrated a range of racist practices operating throughout the criminal justice system, particularly Crown prosecution and within the courts. A number of those issues are really pertinent for communities in South Manchester but across Greater Manchester, particularly recommendations 5 and 6 around the way that police young black men, particularly around gangs, and also the use of joint enterprise laws. We've just seen 11 young people convicted of 168 years in prison, many of them not at the scene, not involved in the crime. This is about justice according to skin colour, and I wonder how you will challenge racial injustice in Greater Manchester.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, and I can say directly that I will. Beverly Hughes is here this evening, the Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime. I don't know whether Bev wants to say something in a moment. What I would say to you is, as Shadow Home Secretary, I did support a change in the law, because, as you say, the joint enterprise laws, in my view, have led to injustices, not just here, but all over the country. So I supported that call and that change. And what I would say to you is that I would always be prepared to look at individual situations if you wanted to bring those to me or to Bev as Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime. But overall, I believe the case for changing the law on joint enterprise is overwhelming.
Before we get to Bev, I'm definitely getting to the guy with the white t-shirt. Sorry.
Hi, Mayor. Talking about the community and policing. I live in Moorside. I spend part of my life in Moorside. And the way the police are policing the community, we feel that instead of bringing the community together, it's actually taking them apart. Simply because some of the youngsters growing up, like 19, 20, they're so scared even to go on the streets simply because the approach of the police approach to them. So what are you going to do to bring the police and the community closer together? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well,
What I'll do that. Andy, if you respond to that, I'd like to bring in Ian Hopkins, Chief Constable, as well, and then come to you, and then have a question over here.
So we'll get to you. Say was a very brief response. Ian is at the back. I'm struggling. I can see you now, Ian. What I would just say is, I obviously don't know, all of the issues that you're describing, but what I can say is I would be prepared to come down and sit down and talk to the community about them, and to see if we can. Sorry. Right. I am aware of the campaign because I worked with them before. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay.
Ian, do you have the microphone there?
Listen, we police some really difficult issues in large parts of our communities across Greater Manchester. Our approach is very much to work with local communities, and we have a history, despite some of the issues in South Manchester, we have a really strong history from around 2008 of working extremely closely with community groups, Mothers Against Violence, people like Dr. Arima Bell, to actually overcome some of the challenges. Now, if there's specific issues that we need to speak about in South Manchester at the moment, we're happy to do that. Wasim Chowdhury, who is a black and Asian minority ethnic senior officer, going back to the earlier conversation, is the head of policing in Manchester. I'm happy to come with Wasim and speak to you. But there are real challenges. I was at the carnival in Moss Side, and as welcoming as everybody was, there was bags passed through that fence to get around security that contained really, really serious knives. And I absolutely understand the issues around joint enterprise, and I hear what Andy says. But you know what? There was a young man murdered, stabbed to death, driven over in a car, beaten with bats on our streets. No,
Sorry,
listen,
can you
listen,
let one at a time, please?
Listen. All I'm saying, no, I don't think it's lazy piecing at all.
Sorry.
I'm not going to continue, Rob.
Well, I need to. So we've got lots of other voices to hear tonight. Bev, can I pass on to you now? So we'll just get the microphone to you. Thank you.
Well, just on joint enterprise, I think the law does need looking at. It was brought in for a very good reason, because there are some crimes where one person blamed another. For instance, the killing of a child. One parent blamed another. And the law as it stood could not take either of them to court because there was no proof. So joint enterprise was brought in to make sure that together, in that example, those people could be brought to trial. So the kind of core of it was a good intention around victims and justice for victims. And I think we just need to hold on to that. The Supreme Court obviously has allowed some appeals, and we'll kind of see where that goes. On the warder issue, I can say to you absolutely categorically that from the point of view of Andy and myself and the Chief Constable, this issue about policing fairly and working strongly and closely with communities is really at the heart of what we're trying to do and what they have been trying to do. The relationships between the police and members of the community is critically important to us. The whole focus of the way in which we've changed the way we think about policing and criminal justice in Greater Manchester is to put the reduction of harm to victims at the centre of what we're doing. And we've turned everything around to try and police things in that way so that we get justice for victims. I know where Ian Hopkins is coming from. It's where I'm coming from and where Andy's coming from. We cannot say that every instance when police officers, do their job, they do it correctly. But I know what the messages are from the top, and we support you in what you're trying to do. But talk to us. We're really willing to come down and talk to you. But that is what we're trying to do.
Thank you both. I've got one here. I have one question at the front here, and then I'll go back to my list. Thanks very much. Your question, please. Could you stand up? Thank you. Cheers.
Good evening. I'm representing a group called Team Future, and we're working class young people. So the mayor just said, let's get rid of stigma, and we all agree. And I just want to say that many of the issues that we talked about, like mental health and ethnic minorities being discriminated against, I think the key, like the solution to this is young people. We are the future, and I think people should have hope in us, and we want to show you that we care. And Andy Burnham, you've actually met with us, and I just want to ask if you could commit to meet us again.
Of course, I'll always do that. I said I would put young people at the heart of everything that I'm going to do, and I've already said some of the things tonight that we've brought through. And the commitments I made stand. The free bus pass for 16 to 18-year-olds will come. I've got to work on it and get all the policy in place, but it will come. There's something I just want to say directly in answer to your question. I'll do more than meet you, actually. Tomorrow, hopefully with the support of Sean and the other leaders in Greater Manchester, we're going to put through a proposal through the Combined Authority to establish a Youth Combined Authority in Greater Manchester. So that will be drawn from all of the 10 boroughs, 4 people each, and that will be a group of people able directly to ask Bev to come and speak, or Sean, to get answers from the politicians. But the one thing I'm not going to do is set it up to almost like patronise it or pat it on the head. I want that Youth Combined Authority to do a proper job, and I want it to start with 2 things. Number 1, developing a curriculum for life. So young people tell me they're lacking the support that used to be there in schools, careers advice or other support, mentoring. I want young people to be able to put in place that support that's lacking. Schools have become like exam factories, haven't they? And they're not giving young people the same advice that they used to. So I want that Youth Combined Authority to bring that through. But I also want it to bring through the bus pass we're going to call an opportunity pass, because we want it to link to the apprenticeships, to the internships, to the work shadowing. So all of the opportunities for young people that are out there, we want this to be an online system that will support young people to move from school into study or into work. And I want the Youth Combined Authority to lead the policy in both of those areas. So we're not just setting you up to kind of be a talking shop. We want it to be a body with a real voice that can challenge the politicians in Greater Manchester, but also lead policy in areas that matter to you.
Thanks, Andy.
All 10 of the boroughs in Greater Manchester, and there'll be a commitment to diverse representation on the body, so people from all backgrounds. Sorry?
Okay, I'm just going to go back to, we obviously had a number of questions submitted in advance, and those people have made sure they've been here tonight, so I want to go to, is Anne Stebbing or Stebbings? Anne, I think a really important issue to raise. Over to you.
I'm here to represent the staff, volunteers and service users of Manchester Rape Crisis. Manchester Rape Crisis has been providing specialist information and support to women in Greater Manchester who have experienced rape and sexual abuse since 1978. Last year we took over 2,000 calls on our helpline. Is the Mayor going to make a commitment to provide financial support to our organisation so that we can continue to provide a service to women in Greater Manchester who suffered or have been victims of this horrendous crime?
Thanks, Anne.
Well, Andy. Yes, in principle. I've not got all of the figures in front of me this evening, but I know that my predecessor, Tony Lloyd, did provide support to support organisations that are providing... Okay, well, I was under the impression that we had given some funding through the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner, but I will go back and check that. Bev, I don't know if you wanted to add anything, but I mean, in principle, absolutely. I, as Health Secretary, funded sexual assault referral centres around the country, and we brought through a whole new system of support. I passionately believe we need a strong strategy here to prevent violence against women and girls, and I believe the voluntary sector has a critical part to play in that. So I will look into the details of what you're saying with regard to your organisation. Bev, do you want to add anything?
Yes, I don't know the detail of what you're actually saying in terms of funding. I certainly know that through Andy's office now, the former PCC, Police and Crime Commissioner office, there is funding going to rape crisis, and many local authorities are still funding rape crisis too. This is an absolutely top priority. I'm going down to St Mary's Sexual Assault Referral Centre. I launched some activity last week with some big projects that are going to talk to women to get their experiences of not just obviously, but the policing and the court processes and the support for women who've been through that. So the domestic violence, sexual violence, rape is a top priority, as is, as I said, the focus on victims and particularly women and girls. So, you know, we will fund where we can. We are funding. Again, I'll come and talk to you if there's a particular issue for your centre.
It's been, and just to say, thanks. Ian and his colleagues have always given a high priority to this area that they have. We wouldn't say we've always got everything perfectly. No one has, but here, Greater Manchester Police, I think there's always been a commitment to work to improve services, and we will, both of us, we will talk to you further about what more we might be able to do.
Just wait for the microphone. Thank you.
As a rape crisis centre in Manchester, and there's another one in Trafford, we have not had any money from the PCC.
Okay, no, I understand. I hear that, and obviously other organisations have, and obviously we'll look into the background to that.
We've got this childhood sexual abuse. It's not right.
No.
Thanks for that, and we'll be very interested to see the follow-up to that to make sure that conversation takes place. And are there any questions related to that issue? Because I've got two more questions that people I've asked to come to here tonight. We'll get through those, and then we'll have a few minutes at the end. Short, sharp questions at the end, please. Can I call on Liz Patel? Liz?
Hello, good evening. Liz Patel. Some very good questions from everyone. We'd just like to ask what role the Mayor can play in accurately monitoring and improving air quality in Greater Manchester, and if you could relate that specifically to Stretford.
Yeah. I think this is an issue that we've all been too complacent on, haven't we? Across Greater Manchester, in 7 of our boroughs, including yours, we have air that's in breach of legal limits, and I don't think we can be complacent about it anymore. The biggest driver of poor air quality, even illegal air quality, is traffic congestion, and that is diesel, HGVs, buses and cars. So you may have seen last week I launched a consultation on tackling congestion. We've got to do something about levels of congestion. We've got to get Greater Manchester moving. Again, it's not one of those where I can say, oh, it's all easy, and bear in mind, I've said it through Rob's great paper that we're not just reaching to put charges on the motorist. What I think we've got to do is use new powers to regulate our buses, because a lot of them are not helping in terms of the emissions that they're spewing out. We have got to do much more, in my view, to promote cycling. So I am working with Chris Boardman, who I've appointed as the Cycling and Walking Commissioner for Greater Manchester. We need to make some real changes here, high quality cycle lanes that are separate from the main carriageway, so that we encourage people away from their cars and onto their bikes. Lots of different things that we need to do. And there is the possibility of clean air zones, so that if the air is very poor, that we then kind of limit certain type of vehicles in those zones. That could be HGVs are not allowed into that particular area. So there's a whole range of things that we need to do. What I can tell you is we will be bringing forward a clean air plan for Greater Manchester that will address all of these things. And I think as part of it, we need to follow the lead of the Mayor of London and actually publish data on an open source basis every day, so that people can see that the air that they're breathing, and they can take their own decisions to avoid the worst affected areas.
Thank you very much. One last question from the listener there. Is Richard Bliss here? So there's a question regarding policing of the conference. Is somebody here to ask that question? Sorry. Hi, this is the middle. Sorry, thank you.
Thank you. I'm Councillor Sid Lloyd. I'm the Conservative Group Leader on Stockport Council, so I'm sure I'm amongst friends here tonight. Sean and I shortly will be going to the Conservative Party conference in Manchester Central. The conference will bring to the conurbation about £26 million in terms of benefits, in terms of hotel rooms and other things. In 2015, I and other delegates were subject to a harassment abuse and had to run a gauntlet of vile and extreme verbal abuse. People were spat upon, they had bags of urine, eggs and other missiles thrown at them. We were surrounded, physically intimidated, and a number of female delegates were subjected to threats of sexual violence. This year, I understand there's going to be further protests outside the conference. So I want to ask the Mayor, if I may, as Greater Manchester Mayor, with oversight for policing, what plans do you have in place to ensure Conservative delegates at the conference are protected from these unacceptable harassment and physical intimidation? I'd also ask you if you would invite you personally to walk with me from St Peter's Square Metrolink stop to the entrance of the conference to witness at first hand the abuse delegates may face if you and the police decide not to put in place robust plans to provide safe access for conference delegates.
Thanks, Sid. As a journalist, I got caught in a crossfire as well 2 years ago. So I'm going to ask Andy to respond, and then I'd like to get a word from Ian as well.
I was going to say, Ian should come in on this because Greater Manchester should be a place where people have freedom to make their views known, to protest, but not to abuse, intimidate or harass anybody. And obviously the behaviour you described from a couple of years ago is not acceptable here. So what I have done, and I've worked with Sean and Bev on this, is meet with Ian's team who have been looking at the arrangements. I think there was a recognition that some things last time could have been done differently and better, and there's been a reflection about that. So we've been looking at the plans, and we hope that the balance will be properly struck, and people will be free to make their point, but you will also be free to have a conference without intimidation or abuse. So as Mayor, I'll be welcoming the Prime Minister and your party to Greater Manchester. We recognise the benefit that it brings. And let's be honest, it's an opportunity to have a dialogue about investment in the North. This is an important part of our democracy, and we want to ensure that it is a well-run, respectful conference that shows Greater Manchester in the light that we all want it to be shown. But Ian, would you like to add anything to that?
It brings an awful lot of income generation to the area, but it costs about £3.5 million to police as well. Some of which we get back from central government, some of which comes from our policing budget here. The point I would make is this: it is a partnership between the Conservative Party, or the Labour Party as it has been in the past, the police and the local authority. We do proper risk assessments jointly as those three concerned parties before all of it. It's risk assessed against the terrorist threat, against public order threat, and it is recognised that from 2 years ago there was fault on all sides within that led to some of those scenes that were described, which are wholly unacceptable and won't be tolerated. I met with Lord Feldman, who was the chairman of the Conservative Party. I saw him again a few weeks ago, actually, and there's a recognition from the party themselves that there was not sufficient security from Group 4 that enabled people to get through quick enough, which led to excessive queues. So there will be better queuing systems, better security internally, which will help with the flow of people into the party. There will be clearly a significant police presence, but the majority of that presence is around the security threat from terrorism, whilst allowing people to protest and get their point of view across. And I am very much supportive of what Andy's saying. It has to be tolerant protest, it has to be considered protest. The behaviour we saw 2 years ago is not acceptable, and if people continue to behave like that, they will be arrested.
Final point I'll just say, I agree with everything that Ian's just said. The final point I'll say is, I asked, recognising the concern that you and others would have, I asked to meet Ian's senior team, who are very experienced in these matters. I've got a high degree of confidence in in the arrangements that they've put in place. But yes, I will be around all next week, and I'd be happy to walk through the city centre. I will be doing, because I'll be attending events around the conference. I would be happy to walk through if that request comes through. But let's hope that things go off as they should do.
Thank you. We've got Andy for another 10 minutes, so I'd like to throw it open. But can I have questions of people who have not asked questions yet on issues we've not raised? And can we keep them tight? Questions that we can get onto Andy. Lady there.
Hello, Lisa Heenley, Trafford resident. I just want to ask Andy if he's aware of the recent developments in Stretford in terms of we had residential plans for a master plan and residential housing just across from the public hall, and it's just been announced now that those plans won't be going ahead, and we'll be having a student village. So initially 1,700 students from the new campus up the road, and then eventually 6,000 students amongst us in our small community. I'm just wondering, my question to you, do you think one is an appropriate area for such an influx of students, and will you maybe have a discussion and open dialogue for fair representation of the community that we do have currently?
Thank you.
I mean, I don't want to kind of look like I'm being a politician, say, it's all Sean's issue, but it is largely an issue for Trafford Council. But what I would say is I see a lot of potential in this proposal. I think it could bring real benefits. For those who don't know, this is the proposal of Gary Neville and class of '92, but not just them, Lancaster University, Microsoft. This could be really beneficial in terms of opportunities for young people from this borough and from Greater Manchester to develop good digital qualifications and other qualifications. It might open up university to people who currently couldn't afford it. And it could be good for the regeneration of Stretford more broadly. But, there is a but, it has to be done in real consultation with the public. And I'm sure that's something that Trafford Council are about to do. And it is, as I say, principally a matter for them. I would say let's be open-minded about this. The debate needs to take place, doesn't it? The plans need to be studied. But I think there is a kind of quite exciting proposal at the heart of this, if you want my honest opinion.
Thanks. Lady just sat next to the questioner.
Hi, this is kind of a wider political question, but I'll be quick. You've just kind of highlighted it slightly, really. It's great to have an elected mayor in Manchester. Trafford, though, Manchester's a big place, obviously, and Trafford, we're just a small part of it. And here we have a Conservative, controlled council. What I'd like to know more of is how your relationship works, really. Where the line's drawn. We've also got, obviously, a Conservative government, I think, in charge. I'm on a serious point. There's quite a lot of blurring of lines, and basically for people like us, where's the accountability and who's got top trumps?
Okay. It is a bit blurry, isn't it? It is. And some things I'm responsible for, some things Sean is responsible for in your borough, and obviously that might take a while for people to kind of see which is which. Some things we'll have to work together on, and rightly so. You saw my manifesto. I think you can see where I'm coming from in terms of tackling homelessness, supporting young people, tackling the private rented sector. You can see where I'm coming from. And in my view, I've got a mandate here from the public of Greater Manchester to take that through. But what I want to is work in partnership with the leaders of the 10 authorities to do that. I think yeah.
You both have responsibility for that.
It's going to be a case of working together where we can, isn't it? I think, and I've got a clear mandate, and in terms of the powers at my disposal, you can see where I'm coming from. But Sean and I agree on more than you might think when it comes to Greater Manchester. I mean, in the end, I think, if I'm honest, as somebody who's left Westminster, the point scoring up, to be honest with you, doesn't often get you very far. When the parties do put that to one side and say, look, how can we work for the better of this place, you tend to find you can probably make more progress. You know where, you can see where my instincts are, where my values are, but at the end of the day, we've all got to be in this room fighting for the Greater Manchester and for the north of England, because we haven't had a fair deal from Westminster at all. And I think the more that we do that, the more that we join forces to get the investment that Greater Manchester and the north needs, then I think we'll all be the beneficiaries of that, rather than me coming here and playing pointless party political games with Sean. I don't think that would help anybody, to be honest with you.
Thank you. The questions later there.
And I'm representing the women of WASPI across Greater Manchester, the thousands of us. My question to you, Andy, is you supported WASPI when you were an MP at Lee. In your manifesto before you became Mayor of Manchester, you supported us women. You said you would look into travel costs for women. In London, women get free travel, in Liverpool and in places across the country. Are you able to help us and look into it? There's women of 62, 3 and 4 having to pay £5 a day to travel on buses for job interviews. I won't go into the details. You know the details of the campaign.
I do.
My question is, can you please look into this? And this is on behalf of all the women in Greater Manchester. I'm asking you this.
Thank you.
I strongly support your campaign, and I did as an MP and I do as Mayor of Greater Manchester. And for those who don't know, these are women who were expecting to retire at a certain age, weren't properly informed by the government. They then increased it even further and have been left having to try and find part-time work or go back to work. Very difficult. These are, you know, people who've cared for us all, people's mums who've kind of given all their lives to supporting their families and their communities, and then left in this position. So yes, we should, if we can, do more. I've instructed Transport for Greater Manchester to give me proposals for what we can do to help you. I haven't at this point got a firm plan, because obviously I don't just necessarily have the money just lying around straight away, but I will fulfil my commitment to do something to help. I can't tell you tonight what it is, but we're working on it, cool. And I hope at some point we'll be able to come forward with some proposals.
Thanks. Gentlemen on the side there, trying to get as many issues as we can now, so far away.
Local residents. Just on nursing bursaries, Andy, and other bursaries made available for medical training, do you envisage that recipients of such bursaries would be contractually tied to the NHS post-training for a reasonable period of time once they've been recipients of such bursaries?
Oh, absolutely. But the thing is, of course, they've scrapped the nursing bursary nationally. And I think that is a really dangerous step when possibly the NHS is going to find it harder to recruit people with the changes coming from Brexit. I think we should, in Greater Manchester, use the freedom we've got to develop a whole new approach to developing the workforce of the future. I would like to see either we bring back a bursary here, or we do something with tuition fees, on condition that young people, when they graduate from one of our universities, they commit to the Greater Manchester NHS for 5 years. That's the scheme that I'm thinking about. Let's say if they do that, we should then commit to help pay off their tuition fees in each of the 5 years that they commit to stay here. I think we should help care assistants working in social care to do degree apprenticeships to move into nursing. I think we should bring forward a whole host of new ideas to help train the workforce of the future.
Where's it going? I'm going to get 2 more questions in. Lady there. Microphone's coming the other way towards you.
Hi Andy, thanks. I am an ambassador for the Wave Trust and Base Baby Watching, and we've been in contact, and we want to set something up in the northwest. We want intervention. We don't want intervention, we want prevention, and that's what we're working from. But what worries me, and going back to mental health, is that I was looking at Future in Mind, and Ofsted, there are plans from the DfE for Ofsted to come into schools and assess mental health. What would your tactic be in dealing with this and prevent, in prevention?
Yeah. The frustrating thing actually about our devolution deal is we have no ability to tell schools what to do. They're completely out of our plans. They're set up now as academies, many of them, and separate from local government and from other public services. what we've got to do is, in my view, kind of bring them back into the public service family and start working with them on a whole child approach and putting that support in schools that sadly is lacking at the moment. And that's what I was talking about before when I talked about the curriculum for life. I mentioned a new mental health strategy. Greater Manchester is putting an extra £140 million a year into mental health. The bulk of that is going into child and adolescent mental health because we recognise the support has not been there in the way that it should have been. So we are working on this, but a lot of that support does need to be made available to school-age kids who are being bullied or...
You talk about stigma, but, you know, it's neutralising it. How would you approach stigma? How would you take that stigma away?
Well, it's partly about going into schools and talking about mental health, isn't it? In a way, you know, there's some really brilliant, innovative campaigns that are being run using sport. You know, there's other ways of reaching young people, and I think they're open to the message because I think everyone realises now that, you know, times have changed. I was in Parliament the day that an MP first stood up and admitted to having mental health problems. You know, this is only a couple of years ago, so it's changing, but there's a lot more to be done, as you rightly say.
Thanks. I think the issue of mental health, we surveyed our readers recently. 10,000 people asked for responses of what are the things that you were most concerned about across Greater Manchester. Mental health came out absolute number one issue. It's something the Manchester Evening News is going to be looking at in enormous detail, so we'll want to hear all your voices. Last question to the young guy.
We're being waved at over here as well. But
this young man's been asking for a long, long time.
All right.
And we're just about out of time, I'm afraid. So.
You spoke about the Combined Youth Authority, but I wanted to know, how do you aim to involve working class young people who won't necessarily want to be a part of those sorts of organisations because they don't feel like they're being heard in these sorts of environments that you're here with today?
Rob, I know Samuel's been reclaimed. Can he ask his? Because it will be
please do, We'll finish with that one,
Yeah.
Far away.
Hi. Lots of pressure. Okay. So today I've learned a lot about the things that affect me more than my education, 5-year education at Manchester Academy. Did not disgracing the school, it was perfect and lovely, but today's been very educative. And these issues affect millions and millions of people in Manchester. And we hear about the plans you want to have, but I'm not gonna lie, I've been hearing this for the past 7 years. But when am I actually gonna see change? Because we are constantly told that we are the future. When am I actually going to be able to make that change? Thank you.
That's a real tough question to end on there, Samuel. Well, January next year, half price Metrolink for 16 to 18-year-olds. Okay, it's not everything, but it's something. It's a sign that there is real support coming through. I want to move to that free bus pass as soon as I possibly can. Bear in mind, the government never gave me a budget for any of this. They didn't. I'm trying to do it in a way that I can best do it with what I've got. We've already put half-price bus travel in for 16 to 18-year-olds. We're doing as much as we can at the moment, and I hope in the end it will start to feel like real change, but I can understand why, you know, you're sceptical. And in terms of the voice, somebody else touched on this before, it's got to be voices from all communities, but you've got to put yourselves forward and demand to be on that youth council and demand that it is fair and that it's representative of your area. So, you know, it will...
I'm the youth sport officer. You've heard a lot of young people from Team Future today, and they are young people who are trying to make a difference in their communities, and they've asked you today and last time for you to come and speak to them. You did do it last Christmas, but we've not heard from you for a year. So you make a commitment that you will come and hear their views, because you should do, because they've got some really good views.
Well, it's a bit unfair.
Can that happen before Christmas?
It's a little unfair. I went to an event at Cross Street Chapel that Reclaim were at. That was only a couple of months ago.
But Team Future is a programme which is about working class young people building their own platform.
Okay, well, I will. No,
brilliant. No. You have met before, and you do speak well. I just wanted to get that confirmed, before Christmas.
I will confirm it here and now. I will
Amazing.
do it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Let me just say this, though. You know, can I say one last thing, Rob? At the end? Do you know what I love actually about this is that, you know, we all want a lot of change, don't we? And I think the good thing is people might have said, oh, this devolution is all irrelevant, it won't change things. I think people maybe are almost believing that we can change things together through it. And what I would say to you is that I sit up here and have the question time, and it's almost as if I'm positioning myself as I've got all the answers to everything, or Bev's got all the answers to everything, or Sean has, or Ian has. We're not saying that, actually. Honestly, we're not coming here to say that tonight. We're saying here's what we think, and here's how we think we can best move things forward. But the point is, the more you invest in what we're trying to do, and the more you get involved in it, the more it will achieve, I think, the stronger it will be. Because that's the way I see it. Devolution in Greater Manchester and elsewhere is a chance to change the way politics works. You know, not the old point scoring, as I said, or the old top-down solutions, but communities actually starting to debate things and develop solutions for ourselves. So, you know, genuinely, don't sit on the sidelines here. You know, the north of England has had a rough deal out of Westminster for as long as we can all remember. And if we're ever going to change that, if we're ever going to get the voice of Greater Manchester heard more nationally and loudly, then this has surely got to be it. So, you know, don't stand on the sidelines, get involved, challenge us more, help us develop the right solutions for the future, because, you know, by God, we need them. There are a lot of challenges in this country, as we all have debated tonight, but I've got a lot of faith in you and in the people of Greater Manchester, and if we all get involved, we can change some of these things for the better. So thank you, everybody, for coming, and thank you, Rob, for being here.
Thank you, everyone, for the questions. There'll be another session in a month's time. I think this just shows this is about devolution in action. Working with Andy, putting him on the spot. Brilliant questions tonight. I've been absolutely blown away. Thank you very much for your attendance. Give yourselves a round of applause. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Rob.
Yes.
Thanks very much.